know the tale of the butt scorpion?
No, when did you get stung in the ass?
When I was in high school, I mentioned before on the podcast that I have a pretty bad death anxiety, especially when it comes to going to sleep. And in high school, when it was really bad, I would like go sleep other places in my house, which would help. And so frequently after my older brother went to college, there was a futon in what used to be my little brother's room. And I would go sleep on that futon all the time. One night I was sleeping on the futon and I woke up in the middle of the night and my butt really hurt. But I looked around, I didn't see anything. I didn't see a scorpion. So I was like, I think I'm fine. Went back to bed like a genius. Woke up in the morning, my butt still kind of hurt, but I was like, it doesn't hurt in the way that like my dad described a scorpion sting hurting. So I assumed I got bit by a spider. Went to school all day. It was kind of numb. My high school boyfriend came over after school and we were watching Inglourious Bastards. He goes, there's a scorpion on your floor. And we looked down and a scorpion had gotten stuck in the part of the pen where you can like hook it onto things. You know what I mean?
Wow.
This part. Its tail had gotten stuck in there and it was like the pen was too heavy for it to drag. And so that confirmed that I had been stung in the butt by that scorpion that then got itself stuck in that part of the pen.
But like not enough where you had to like then go to the hospital or something.
No. And I also think I was stung in the butt.
Yeah.
Like I was stung in like a place that's mostly fat and muscle.
Right.
My dad got stung in his knee in like a vein.
Yeah.
And like would have died had we not taken him to urgent care.
Yeah. Do you remember, oh my god, at this point it would have been over 10 years ago, there was a story of a woman who had an allergic reaction at the Grand Canyon and died. I was actually friend of a friend with her, and one day like was at like a gathering where we were all together, and then she was like, yeah, that was when my mom died, and I was like, holy shit.
What was the allergic reaction?
I can't remember to save my life. I just remember it was all over the news when I was in high school of this woman who had died at the Grand Canyon from an allergic reaction. I would assume maybe some kind of sting, maybe even like a bee sting.
Yeah. Well, speaking of things that happened over 10 years ago, welcome to Informed Attraction, a podcast about the middle of the public shaming and female empowerment Venn diagram, hosted by one pair of mom jeans and one sweater from the 1980s. I'm Mackenna Goodrich.
I'm Dr. Aubrey Hoffer.
And today we are going to talk about What Not to Wear, an American reality show where women are nominated by friends and family for having awful style, and two experts help them build a new wardrobe. This was a show that I used to watch all the time when I was a kid. My mom was big on specifically like this brand of show on TLC. Like I never want to say that like we watched a lot of TLC growing up because we didn't watch any of like My Strange Addiction, My 600-Pound Life, anything like that. It was all these like fashion shows that were on TLC. So like this one, Say Yes to the Dress, Four Weddings. Was
Love
like
Four Weddings.
Four Weddings is incredible. When I was sick and home from school, my mom and I would just lock in on some Four Weddings.
You know the TLC show that I am addicted to is Sister Wives.
See, we weren't a sister. I've never seen an episode of Sister Wives.
I fucking love Sister Wives. The thing with Sister Wives that is so great is that, you know, these are four women who are married to like the worst man ever, and he's
just truly. I've seen so many photos of that man, and I'm like, girlies, what are we doing?
And it's so great to watch because like they're like fucking fundy Mormons, right? So he's not abusive. Like he's not he is definitely emotionally manipulative and arguably emotionally abusive, but he's not a drunk. He's not like beating on them. Like he is just so fucking toxic and manipulative.
Yeah.
And I feel like that is more ethical for me to watch than someone who is the former. But it's like, over the years, you just watch the fucking breakdown of his relationships with all of these women, except for his newest favorite wife that he has.
Right.
And just, over time, the other three wives just realize, holy shit, this guy doesn't give a fuck about me. And I think all of them are actually out of the church now.
Isn't there some episode of that show where they like go meet another one of like another like poly family and the guy's like really cool and really nice and all of the wives are like, oh, we could be living differently? I
literally feel like I told you this on another episode we recorded.
My other thing I was going to say about the FLDS is, did you ever watch the Keep Sweet documentary on Netflix?
Mm-mm.
About Warren Jeffs and the FLDS in Arizona? Okay, so it's worth watching. It's really, really fucked up and scary, but Warren Jeffs basically was like this really evil like leader of like specifically the FLDS. And my friend here in New York went on a date with a guy whose last name was Jeffs. And then while they were on a date once, he mentioned that he used to be Mormon. And she literally was like, wait. And he was like, yeah, my dad is Warren Jeffs.
Oh no, his mom was probably 12.
Yeah. And so, and she was like, oh my God. Like, I just like, one of those things, like similar to what you were just talking about with like you seeing this news story when you're a kid and then meeting the person whose mom it was who died. Like, Becca was like, oh my God, I just watched this documentary about this like horrible man. And then here I am on a date in New York City with a guy that's his dad.
Yeah.
Just wild stuff. Well, back to What Not to Wear, which is not quite so bleak. Aubrey, you did not grow up watching What Not to Wear.
No, I feel like I've seen maybe an episode of What Not to Wear, maybe a handful in my life. If I had to, like, summarize, gun to my head, what I think What Not to Wear is like, I'm assuming someone is probably nominated by, like, a friend or family member to be on the show, and then the host criticize their appearance, and then give them a makeover, and then they look better, apparently. Is that, like, the gist?
Yes, that is the gist. Do you know anything about the two people who host the show?
Not at all.
Okay, great. I think you're gonna love Stacy London. I think you might hate Stacy London during the show, but I think you're gonna love Stacy London now. And we'll talk about her we'll talk more about how Clinton and Stacy are now in the next episode. But for some background, What Not to Wear was based on a British show of the same name. I had never seen the British version before, so I watched a little bit of it for this. And the format is ostensibly the same as what I'm going to describe for the American version, except for in later seasons, it changed from other people nominating the participants to either people submitting themselves, or they would have these like special themed episodes where like daughters would nominate their mothers, and then there would be like a cattle call casting process where they met like a bunch of girls. It reminded me of like the first episodes of like America's Next Top Model, basically, except for it's for makeovers. And the other primary difference is that the host would also spend one of the days of the show living as the participants, which they don't do in the American version, which I thought was really interesting to try to like understand their like needs better, I guess.
Interesting.
Both hosts of the British version are also women, whereas the hosts of the American version are a woman and a man. And I personally found the British host ruder than the American host, which I wasn't necessarily expecting. But generally, both sets of hosts definitely have this like blunt but supportive tone.
English shows in the 2000s had a really severe tone when it came to weight and beauty standards. There's one that I've heard about, and it's gonna kill me, and we'll have to look up the name of it, but I swear I think it's one where it's like a thin person and a fat person, and they go through what both of them eat over the course of a day, and I want to say they try to make them switch or something, but that's one that I'm heard...
typing in what you're saying.
Yeah, but that's what I've heard the premise of, and I've seen clips of online, and they are fucking brutal in the way they talk about fat bodies. Supersized versus super skinny.
Oh, okay. I've never heard of that.
Yeah.
I think that for me, the difference in the tone between the American What Not to Wear and the British What Not to Wear is that, like, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, but, like, to me, Clinton and Stacy have this very much, like this older sibling vibe of, like, we're sort of, like, egging you on a little bit, whereas, like, the British ones are, like, your, like, cool older cousins who you're not sure if they actually like you or not, or just think you're weird, is the way that I would describe it.
Yeah.
So, back to the American version, What Not to Wear premiered on January 18th, 2003, and ended on October 18th, 2013, airing on TLC. It was hosted by Stacy London and Clinton Kelly for most of the seasons, but season 1 was hosted by Stacy London and Wayne Scott Lucas. I have never seen this season. I think that they basically kind of, like, have tried to hide it, and, like when I was looking it up, like, you couldn't even, like, buy episodes of it. You, like, can only buy episodes starting at season 2 when Clinton becomes the other co-host. Mm-hmm. So Wayne Scott Lucas is a fashion consultant, stylist, and designer. He is most famous for being Janet Jackson's stylist. Specifically, he's very famous for being her stylist in general. He was her stylist at the Super Bowl where Justin Timberlake exposed her breast. And people kind of tried to blame Wayne Scott Lucas for that happening, and he's like explained that, like, obviously that wasn't the intent of the outfit to be able to do that. And literally people try to blame anyone but Justin Timberlake for whipping out Janet Jackson's boob at the Super Bowl.
I hate Justin Timberlake.
I know.
And I feel such, like, that, like, feeling of, like, schadenfreude whenever something bad happens to him. It just delights me.
This is gonna ruin the world tour.
Good.
Do you know what that's a reference to?
Yes.
When he got arrested on.
Yes.
Okay.
Trust me, if there's one thing I'm locked and loaded on, it's whenever something bad happens to Justin Timberlake.
Justin Timberlake is the Rosie O'Donnell to your Donald Trump.
Oh my god, I'm gonna start just fucking tweeting at Justin Timberlake.
I tried looking into why they replaced Wayne Scott Lucas, and the general consensus is that his tone was like way too aggressive for the show, but also it's reality TV, so he was probably told to do that in some sense. But in any case, he's not on the show anymore after the first season, and then it's Clinton Kelly for the rest of the seasons.
I get that, because you can have kind of like a vibe with somebody where, like, I don't know, you ever hanging out with somebody and it's like you're not at the same level of snark? Like, I'm a pretty snarky person, and sometimes somebody will go a little bit further than I am, and I'm like, Now we're just getting a little mean.
And I have a feeling that this is pure speculation just based on like little murmurs that I've read. I have a feeling that Stacy London was like, I don't think that we're like a match.
Yeah.
Here. And I think her and Clinton had worked together at the same magazine briefly, but I'm not totally sure on that. I think they both worked for the magazine Mademoiselle. Yeah. They both worked for the magazine Mademoiselle. And so I think that they knew each other before the show. And they didn't, but I think they did, based on looking at the timelines of both their careers. So the show's cast also included head makeover artist Carmen D for all of the seasons, and then hairstylist Nick Rojo from season 1 through season 6, and then Ted Gibson from season 7 through season 10. And those are sort of like the 4 people who are on the show all the time, is the two stylists, the makeup stylist, and the hairstylist. And then then it's just a participant and their friends and family, and that's sort of who's on the show every episode.
How dated do they look after the makeovers? Like, when you were rewatching? Like, does everyone just look like a 2000s stereotype?
You know what's interesting? Okay, so I watched an episode, the 2 episodes that I watched that I'm then going to have you watch for the next episode. So for context here, I watched 2 episodes of the show. I've seen a lot of episodes of the show, but I watched 2 episodes of the show in prep for this episode, and Aubrey is gonna watch the same 2 episodes for the next episode, and we're gonna get her reaction to them then after I sort of like walk through all of this. And weirdly enough, the answer is no, because the specific framework of fashion that they were going for on this show is, like, weirdly enough, kind of evergreen, but it's because of how boring and narrow it is.
Okay.
So it's like, you know how, okay,
they de-yassify them.
You know how, like, Old Navy has kind of never changed?
Which is why I love Old Navy.
Right, exactly. And that's kind of what the vibe of, like, the fashion on this show is it's very much that.
Okay, like trying to make it like timeless, which makes sense.
It is not about trends at all. It's about building a wardrobe that is usable, and so they kind of like very intentionally steer away from anything that's like trendy.
Okay, I actually kind of like that. Like, I think that makes a lot of sense, and like at the time when 2000s fashion was so like kitschy and trend forward, to just be like, let's go back to basics. I think we kind of see a similar thing now happening.
Yes.
Especially with people who are around my age demographic in their later 20s and early 30s, where, all the women my age are like, I don't want to wear, like, teeny bopper clothes anymore.
Yeah, and I think that and I'll get a little bit more into, like, why I think that, and we're about to talk about the cultural moment where this show comes out, and I think there's a good part about that, and I think there's also a really kind of difficult part about sort of the approach to this very narrow way of styling that they do on this show, because it's very narrow.
Well, I think it's really taking away people's ability to cultivate a personal style, right? Like,
yes, this show is not about personal style, and they kind of try to make it seem like it is, but it is not about personal style at all.
Yeah, like, I feel like I'm the kind of person where I really do try to dress in fairly timeless cuts. I think those are just most flattering. Those, I think, look the best. And also, I like a lot of things that are, I don't know, outside of that to create my personal style.
Aubrey, how would you describe how I dress?
I think you dress in a sort of like modern, eclectic way. I think you are not somebody who necessarily like follows trends directly, but I do think, especially being like living in the city at the age that you're at, I think you're very fashion forward.
I would agree with that. Yeah, eclectic is the word I would use. Not like, I wouldn't say I have a quirky style, but I would say I have an eclectic style. Recently, I said this to Aubrey before, I have been dressing like the best friend in a 2000s rom-com.
Yeah.
Who's the woman we always compare to?
Judy Greer.
Judy Greer. So a little bit about the cultural context of the show was coming out in, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the format. So the show sort of emerges out of an early to mid 2000s cultural moment. And I also want to be clear that we're like specifically talking about Western culture here. Like this is all Western culture stuff, specifically American culture, but really Western culture. So this show comes out.
Can you imagine if there was like a Harajuku girl on What Not to Wear? They would have been like, fucking kill yourself.
Can I imagine if there was a Harajuku girl on What Not to Wear? You mean the episode of this show where a Harajuku girl is on What Not to Wear? An episode of the show that exists?
Oh my fucking god!
Let me see if I can find a clip of it, and then maybe we'll watch it later.
So that's the thing. I feel like also like the point of the show is to like look at these sort of like subculture groups and kind of point and laugh. And be like, here's how to make you more normie.
Or maybe it's not Harajuku. I remember a Harajuku one, I think. There's definitely a Lolita one, but I think there is also like a Harajuku girl one too. I'll see if I can, maybe for the next episode, see if I can track it down. It's just so hard because if you look up insert thing, what not to wear, it just like gives you general advice about like that fashion style and not what I'm looking for when it comes to the, this episode. But anyways, I'll see if we break today at all, or if I'll look it up for next time too. But I know there's a Lolita episode, and I think there's like a girl who's like, who maybe not full Harajuku, but definitely like Japanese style. So the show comes out right around the time that Sex and the City is wrapping up. And I think about like Carrie Bradshaw and how her unique style is such a focal point of that show. And I think of like, I think that this was a time when we started thinking a lot more about like personal style. But I was interested in when I looked it up, like kind of like, basically like the history of styling. I looked into the history of styling. So styling sort of as we know it actually crops up in the 18th century with Rose Burton becoming Marie Antoinette's personal stylist. So Marie Antoinette had a personal stylist. So this is sort of about the embrace of like haute couture in this era in France. And Rose Burton was like the woman who styled Marie Antoinette. And that was sort of like the first big time where that happened. And so she's sort of known as sort of like the first stylist.
Do you know how she got picked? Like, was Marie Antoinette just like, I like your vibe?
Oh, let me see. I think it was in the article that I read. So let me just open that link because I have that linked here. She was a fashion designer.
If you were famous, would you have a stylist?
Absolutely. I would love to have one.
Do you know who you would pick?
No, I don't know enough about them individually to make a decision about that.
I wouldn't want like a professional stylist, but I have an influencer in mind who I really like, and I would be like, I just want you to curate outfits for me, and she would.
Yeah. I mean, I would maybe, who I think about, who I love how she dresses, is Kelly Heyer, who was the girl who created the Apple Dance. We have a pretty similar aesthetic. She does a lot of shopping also at Fashion Brand Company and Big Bud Press.
Good for her.
And so I think I also just think me and her would get along. Her boyfriend does this like playlist exchange every year where like you get a random person assigned to you and you make a playlist for them. And I'm always, it's just funny. It's her boyfriend who runs that. Yeah, so she was a fashion designer, and then she basically becomes the fashion merchant for Marie Antoinette, and then ends up becoming like her stylist, but she was a fashion designer first.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so then we don't really get like styling. So that's like the first like person who like really was like a personal stylist for someone, but the styling as we know it now and how it specifically is used in the context of what not to wear. In the 1960s and 70s, the first like capital S stylists were magazine editors who managed photo shoots and styled models. In the 1970s, image consulting starts gaining popularity, thanks in part to John T. Malloy's book, Dress for Success, which discussed how clothing impacts personal and professional success. I think Dress for Success was mostly for men, but then he made a second one that was specifically for women, but I don't totally know. I think Dress for Success might have been more general. Mm-hmm. He gets called a wardrobe engineer, and that I think is a lot of what they're doing on What Not to Wear is wardrobe engineering, is like putting together a wardrobe that is going to work for people. In the 1980s, we see the emergence of the term fashion editing, which referred to selecting and styling clothes on a model. Freelance stylists begin to really flourish in the 80s, but it's still really all in the magazine space. Ray Petrie was a stylist who wanted to place more of the focus on democratizing fashion instead of it being label and wealth driven. And so I think that like sort of his push to be like, stop giving so much of a fuck about labels and like just start like dressing in things that you like and that are made well and stuff like that sort of starts this sort of like maybe regular people can have a stylist push. So in the 1990s and 2000s, we get the rapid growth of the styling industry, from the rise of personal shoppers to the emergence of celebrity styling in Hollywood. And I think that like that specific intersection of personal shopper and celebrity styling sort of creates the allure of a show like What Not to Wear, where a regular person basically gets to be styled and go on a shopping spree.
I feel like this timeline also tracks really well onto the emergence of like clothes being readily accessible in clothing stores, as opposed to like the norm throughout like even like the 60s and 70s, right? Like most people were like making their children's clothes, whereas in the 80s you start to see like, you know, more like shopping malls and places where people were buying clothes that were already made. And so then it's a thing of like, okay, like how do I wear it then?
Yeah, I think so it's funny, I was re-watching Mad Men starting last night, and in the early part of season 1 of Mad Men, you have Rachel Menken, who owns the Menken's department store, and department stores started cropping up in the 1800s, but they were sort of expensive for a long time, and then in the 1980s is when you start really getting competitors, I feel like, between mainline department stores and like discount department stores.
Right.
I never knew how expensive Nordstrom was until I was like in high school and could go to the mall by myself, because we only ever went to Nordstrom Rack.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh wait, Nordstrom has like nice things at it.
Yeah.
Nordstrom has like designers at it.
Yeah. I had the same experience where my mom would always go to Nordstrom Rack, and then the first time I went into a Nordstrom, I was like, oh my god.
Yeah.
The mall near me has a Von Maur, which is just like a really fancy, I think it's like a southern department store, but they've got like a piano player inside, and like every time I walk in, I'm like, ooh, this is nice.
Yeah. I had only ever heard of Extreme Makeover Home Edition, and I didn't realize that it was a spinoff of Extreme Makeover, which started in 2002 and depicts ordinary men and women undergoing extreme makeovers involving plastic surgery, exercise regimens, hairdressing, and wardrobing.
Speaking of shows that my family was locked into, my mom watched Extreme Home Makeover every time it was on, and she would cry every episode.
Move that bus! Yes, I literally didn't know that there was that it was a spinoff of another show.
Me neither.
Until I started researching this episode. So and then Queer Eye for the Straight Guy also comes out in 2003. It premieres after What Not to Wear does, but in the same year. And Queer Eye for the Straight Guy, later just known as Queer Eye, it stopped being called Queer Eye for the Straight Guy in the original version after the second season, and then obviously now is also just called Queer Eye. And so it has a similar makeover model, though Queer Eye extends just beyond clothing. So there's a lot of, just at this time, early 2000s, this focus on like personal grooming and self-improvement happening in reality TV.
Right. Well, I think that's also an offshoot of the whole, like, you know, we talked about in the American Psycho series, the like 80s movement of, you know, looking your very best, and then that sort of starts to taper off in the 90s, and then the 2000s comes back as a very aesthetic forward, you know, decade.
Yeah. I also think specifically that so there are some episodes of What Not to Wear that are men in the early seasons, but then like eventually it is all women in like for most of the show. We're also in this era in the early 2000s of like corporate feminism and the beginning of like the girl boss, which is why I think a lot of the framing of dress in this show is about being professional. They like professional, classy. These are words that they use all the time. When I think back to it, like even before I started rewatching it, that seems to be like their main critique of all of the women's clothing is that it's not professional, which is just like an interesting thing to talk about when you're talking about personal style.
Well, it's also so different now because I feel like what we consider professional post-COVID has really changed so much.
Yes.
It's also one of those things where when you become a professional person, right? Like, you know, I have my job right now, like, the clothes that I wear to work and the clothes that I wear outside of work are the same clothes. I think a lot of people have sort of separate wardrobes for work and then off of work, and that just kind of fucks you up. And so I just think that over time, for most people, your style just kind of evolves into this, like, amalgamation of, like, professional work clothes.
Right. And I think that's exactly, I have a big long paragraph basically saying this exact same thing. So sorry that I'm about to repeat myself.
Yay!
But I think that gets into like fashion as a social survival tool. And when we think about just how much time we spend at work, especially in the days of yore when basically all jobs were in person. My mom worked from home before it was cool, but that wasn't regular before COVID. But like Aubrey, like to your point, like both you and I have jobs that are not full-time in-office jobs.
Right.
Like you have some in-person work, but also you're remote a lot of the time. And then my job is fully remote. And so basically no one ever sees what I'm wearing from the waist down. And, you know, people dress kind of dress whatever for complex, because I also work in like a creative industry.
Yeah.
But that is not the normal experience for most people. And even now, living on Work Island, as I do, Manhattan gets called Work Island for people who don't live in New York. Like, if you go to Midtown or to like the financial district during the weekday, it's a lot of people in outfits that you would probably see on What Not to Wear, just genuinely.
Yeah.
So it does make sense that office culture would have some influence on what clothing people would wear, because they need to be able to wear their clothes at work, the place that they're spending the majority of their time. So then when we get this sort of like dominant workplace culture, it then deems what is professional, and that has a lot of influence over what people should or should not wear. And I think there is obviously something to be said here about like respectability politics and looking put together as a moral virtue. A lot of times when people have like a really eccentric style on this show, or a sort of casual, they love the word frumpy on this show, it's not just an indicator of how that person likes to dress, but how they are as a human being, because they aren't conforming to this dominant culture that is so defined by corporate dress.
Frumpy was always the word that my mom would use to describe outfits that she didn't like on me. And I don't know. It's very interesting, right? Because, like, I think that it's changed the way I think about my style, because especially living in a fat body, like in an age where everyone is like all about oversized, baggy everything, I've always avoided that, because on a fat body, that is quote unquote frumpy looking.
Right. And I think that like, and I'll get into this a little bit later, but like, I do think there's been so much in the influencer era of like trying to disentangle some of that. I mean, there's so many people who do that thing online that's like, is it a fit or is she just thin? Or like styling oversized clothing for large bodies. But that just like wasn't a thing then.
Yeah.
And like one of their huge rules on this show is about like a defined waistline.
Yeah. What do you notice when they have like a fat person on and they give them style advice? Are they just trying to cover them up?
They're trying to cover, I want to be very clear, they're trying to cover everybody up on this show.
Yeah.
They are trying to cover everybody up on this show, but I think it is all about like the word flattering. They are not overtly judgmental of people's bodies. There is never this like, you should lose weight thing on this show. And I really appreciate that there is never this like, you need to change your body thing, but there is the sort of the flip side to that is there is always a focus on wearing clothes that are slimming. Mm-hmm. So it is not fat phobic in the way of like fat people are evil and bad and should be put in a big potato sack and not be seen in public, but they're modus operandi is to put people in the most quote-unquote flattering and slimming clothes.
Right. I mean, I'm familiar with that, right? Like, I mean, I remember in the 2010s, everyone was like, wear a peplum
Yes.
skirt because it covers up your hideous, disgusting tummy, but you can still
Right.
wear something that's slim.
Right. So, let's talk about the structure of What Not to Wear. I purchased for $3 American and then $2 American because the older ones were only available in standard definition. So $5 American plus an additional episode I wanted to watch that I spent $2 more on, so it was $7 total. I spent that much money.
Email us at informedattraction@gmail.com, and your first Patreon donation can be to compensate Mackenna for the money that they spent purchasing What Not to Wear.
Oh, I have spent money on Paramount Plus for this podcast. We're gonna make tax write-offs. I don't actually think I can because I don't make money off this. Anyway, though I think I probably could have done the structure from memory, I wanted to watch an episode while I detailed the structure, and I knew I was gonna need to, since I knew I was gonna have to buy episodes. Aubrey, I'm gonna give you my Amazon login, and then you can watch the episodes that I bought
fucking
that
go!
way. Yeah. So because I'm basing this a lot on the episode that the first episode I watched last night. So I watched an episode, did this outline, and then I watched the second episode. And so yes, I will give you my Amazon login so you can just watch them on my Amazon account. I'm just gonna talk about the structure. I'm not gonna say anything about the episode that I watched. For those in the know, I watched the Denise episode when I was writing this structure, and then we'll actually talk about the content of that episode after Aubrey watches it for next time. So first I want to discuss but what I will say is during this, the TLC YouTube channel does fast forward versions of a lot of episode where they basically do like a 5-minute highlight reel of an episode. And so Aubrey, we are going to watch a few of those, not in full, but like a few clips of those today, just so you can see what I'm talking about. And then you'll watch the whole thing in context for next time. Cool. So in the opening of the show, once they get the formula down, there's usually some sort of like snarky cold open, and then they introduce us to the woman they're going to be making over. It's usually a friend or a family member, or honestly, back to my work point earlier, it's a coworker. And they tell us about why they nominated the woman, and they kind of low-key shit talk them with Stacy and Clinton. And then they ambush the participant and reveal that they've been secretly filming the participant for the past 2 weeks. They offer her $5,000 to get a whole new
think
wardrobe.
You're just getting gang stalked. You just, you're just like, oh my god, the government is after me, and then you're just on What Not to Wear.
Yeah. They offer her $5,000 to get a whole new wardrobe on the condition that the woman brings her entire wardrobe to New York, and Stacy and Clinton get to go through it and decide what goes in the trash. So obviously, participants in the full episode say yes, but they have talked about on the show before, like people say no, and if they say no, they just go, okay, great, and then they never use it and they move on to the next person because they got tons of nominations. They were never there's never a shortage of people to do this, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So Aubrey, let me send you this first link, and you're just gonna watch the first 30 seconds of this clip, just so you can kind of see what the opening of this show is like.
Yeah, so we've got this woman, Liz, who is a stage mom, and they say she wears outfits that are sometimes frumpy, sometimes too sexy, and it's just clips of her in different outfits, and then they're like, Liz thinks she's taking her kids to an audition or something, but she doesn't know, and then she gets ambushed, and they're like, we are on What Not to Wear, and she looks incredibly uncomfortable.
So I think this opening sequence primarily frames the show as A, a makeover, and B, as a televised intervention. Mm-hmm. But I also think there's a small element of the show that's also framed as like a morality play, because who they are is so conflated with how they dress, and I do think that part of the show is like these snarky comments with the clothes, which like sometimes go into this gray area of also like commenting on the person themselves, which I don't love. So it's like, while this show is primarily around clothes and overall appearance, I do think there is something to be said about like how it enforced notions of how to be a woman correctly in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
So after the woman agrees to the deal, Stacy, Clinton, and the participant watch some of the secret footage together. And this is mostly just them dunking on her clothes and sometimes her hair and makeup. And it's usually when we get to what I'm calling emotional core of the thing. Yeah. This, to me, usually falls into 2 categories, but there are others. Category 1, something horrible happened, and that's why they dress this way now.
Oh, no!
Yes, so it's my full title is Something Horrible Happened, and they stopped taking care of themselves.
It's just like what people say about fat people. They're always like, you're traumatized, that's why you're fat, you need to heal, and you'll be skinny.
Yeah, and then thing 2 is, the clothing is a shield from some sort of insecurity.
Oh my god.
And with both of these categories, there is this framing of like the way you dress is standing in the way of the thing that you want, which is sometimes undeniably true. I think to give this show credit, to act like people are not judged by their appearance and the way that they dress would be disingenuous. And I like that the main ethos of this show is we want your clothes to be a help, not a hindrance to your goals. But my problem is that what they think looks good and is acceptable is really narrow and specific.
It just reminds me of a person who I know professionally who is incredibly bright and wants to be a public-facing figure. And unfortunately, the way this person presents themselves is like that's the thing. It feels so fucked up to be like they look unprofessional, but it's just like always frazzled, right? Like shirt is untucked, hair is messy, things like that. And it doesn't change the fact that this is an incredibly intelligent person, but like to an outsider who knows nothing about the work that they do, it's like, yeah, like you don't look like someone who is knowledgeable about things. Like, you just look like a mess.
Yeah, and I think that that's definitely, like, a point on this show really, really often is about, like, professional. So, like, the woman, Megame, who is not... I know a Megame and a Megumi, and I don't know if I'm not aware if she is a Megame or a Megumi. I'm gonna say Megame. Apologize if it's Megumi. But... like, that's a lot of what, like, in her episode is about, like, she wants to, like, get married and settle down, but because she wears a lot of, like, knee-high socks and, like, animal hats and, like, cutesy style, people are like, you're never gonna, like, find someone dressing like that, and they want her to be, like, more chic and more mature. And you also have, like, there's another girl, Beryl, who, like, she's, like, trying to, like, make headway in her career, and they're like, yeah, but you dress like not professionally, and so like that's not gonna happen. And like I think in both of those cases there is something to be said. There's also like, I mean, who knows, like with the ones, whenever the way they give the women like the you're never gonna attract a guy dressed like that, I am always like, well, they just might not be attracting the type of people who they want to be dating, but there is someone for everybody.
Well, it's like you just gotta find somebody who matches your freak, right? I mean, that's the thing. It's like, if you want to wear a tail and you're attracted to somebody who also wears a tail, then you better wear a tail. But if you're attracted to somebody who, I don't know, like, I like plays on a hobby hockey team, then you might not want to wear a tail.
Yeah. So I just want you to watch this clip until 1 minute and 20 seconds. This is them watching some of the secret footage with a participant.
Okay. So we have this, like, country-looking woman who's, like, clearly kind of a tomboy. I think she reads as a lesbian, who's wearing, like, a camo jacket and has her hair in a ponytail, and her bitchy sister-in-law is, like... I tried to take her dress shopping because she's gonna be in my wedding, and she just didn't even look like she knew what to do. And, I don't know, I feel like they probably femmed her up in this makeover, didn't they?
I don't know, I didn't watch this whole episode.
Well.
But, like, so in this, do you see, like, the parts where they were, like, filming her?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a lot of that. And there's usually some part of it where they, like, also, like, fake stage an interview with the person about something. And so, it's very silly times, as it were. So then the women will bring all their clothes to New York, and they'll put together 3 outfits they would normally wear. They try each of them on in a 360 mirror, which is something that when I was a kid, I was like, why are all these women crying during this part? And now, I get it. For each outfit, Stacy and Clinton will present an alt outfit, and it's just, they're so often quite bland. So Aubrey, in true Informed Attraction style, I have a quote from Reddit. This is what Reddit user Junior Builder had to say about the mannequins during this section. I just sent it to you.
70% of the mannequins in the What to Wear segment are dressed in bootcut trousers, a print or ruche top, structured jacket, and jeweled necklace. 30% of the time, they're wearing a knee-length dress with a structured jacket. The synopsis of the whole What Not to Wear series could just be women buy structured jackets.
And that's just totally true. It's like every outfit has to have a blazer.
It was the time. It was the moment.
Or like a little motorcycle jacket. Like, you know, like the cute little cropped motorcycle jackets.
It's because people thought it defined the waist.
Correct. It's like very It's all very, like, Stitch Fix outfit core, workwear, and, like, Christian Girl Autumn adjacent.
I will say, I did get some great workwear when I did Stitch Fix for a while.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I have some skirts from Stitch Fix and sweaters from Stitch Fix that I love. It's not a zig on Stitch Fix at all, but it's, like, it's just, like, the way that Stitch Fix styles all of their, like, here's how you could put together these outfits is the same way that, like, What Not to Wear does.
Yeah.
And that's totally fine for some people, but it's also not for others. And it's just, like, it's pretty much all they ever present to any of the women on this show, regardless of how old they are. And you'll often hear the girls refer to this part as the rules that Stacy and Clinton gave them. And we'll talk more about the rules later.
The rule is buy a structured jacket.
Yeah. The words sophisticated, classy, and looking expensive get used a lot here. Like, those are, like, some terms that they'll, like, use in basically every episode. There's also a lot of emphasis on covering up, which I always feel weird about. And to the show's fairness, there are times where, like, a girl will be like, I would wear this to work, and then it's, like, basically a lingerie top, and it's like, okay, well, yeah, no, that's, you can't do that. But then it's, like, because everything has to have a jacket on, it's just, it feels so much about, like, modesty in a weird way, and it just always makes me... The episode that I watched last night that I'm gonna have you watch, Aubrey, the girl's 29, and I just think that they really want her to dress, like, older than she is, and I just don't know. I don't love the whole, like, you need to cover up, but I say that as someone who loves tiny top, big pants.
Well, yeah, and I do think, also thinking about the time period, right? 2000s had a lot of very, like, risque outfits in broader culture, and so I think you always have the backlash of, like, whenever there's a time where it's really popular for some people to be uncovered, there's also people who are like, no, I want to cover up. Like, I don't know, do you feel like it's a thing in, like, the past year? I feel like I've seen so many women on red carpets, and they're basically just naked.
Yes.
And it's like, okay, sure. Thanks, Dakota Johnson.
In some ways, it's like a rejection of the very mindset that we see here of, like, women covering up. I also think a thing to be said about that, runway fashion and what people should be wearing in their day-to-day lives are extremely different.
They are.
Or, like, sorry, I said runway. I meant red carpet fashion and what people wear in their day-to-day lives should be different, very different.
Yeah.
So, Aubrey, let me send you this clip. You're going to watch this one until 1:58.
So you have, like, a woman in her 40s who's wearing essentially a denim romper and, like, a hoodie. She mentions that it's her daughter's romper, and then the two hosts are basically like, see, you're just a shrinking violet in this. Why would you want to wear stuff like this? It's a denim diaper. And she's like, it's just self-esteem. And then they go and show her a new outfit that's just, like, random dress. Just random TJ Maxx dress to me.
Yeah. And that's kind of the vibe of all the outfits that they show.
Great.
The women. Yeah. So, and then they do the part of the show that I liked the most when I was a kid, where Stacy and Clinton go through the girls' wardrobe and throw shit away. When I was a kid, I was like, it's just clothes. And it would probably make me cry if it happened to me now. Not only because I think this show, yes, it is just clothes. Like, but this show ties clothing to the person's worth / value / intelligence in a way that, like, I think if they did this to me, I'd be like, oh, you hate all my fun pants? Oh, you think I'm stupid and bad?
If they did that to me, I'd be like, all right, the fuck are you buying me instead?
Correct. So, Aubrey, this is the last clip I'm going to have you watch. Watch this one until 2:24.
Yeah, so they have this woman, her clothes are all on a rack, and they're basically like, all of these clothes are just so teenager. They just say, Mom, I want to go to the mall or whatever. And then they just start throwing a bunch of her clothes in bins.
Yep. So then the girls go shopping by themselves and they try to take Stacy and Clinton's advice into account as they do. Stacy and Clinton will watch the footage of her shopping and comment on it. And then the next day they go shopping with her. So the first day they try to apply, like, the rules by themselves, and then the second day Stacy and Clinton go with and try to help them.
Does anyone ever do it perfectly, or are they always like, oh, why would she buy that?
I wouldn't say anyone ever does it perfectly. There are definitely people who, like, do a good job. It's like there's varying levels of success on day one, for sure.
Okay.
So then they go to hair and makeup, where they get a hair transformation, and Carmody, the makeup artist, normally tries to give them some sort of, like, everyday makeup look. in general, and like there are definitely some people who push back, especially about the hair. I think this section tends to go a little bit better because Nick/Ted and Carmody, I think, do try to meet the person where they're at a bit more than Stacy and Clinton do. Carmody, I think, sometimes still does like a wee bit too much makeup for people who don't want to wear it like at all. But I get that like she kind of has to do something because that's like her section of the runtime of the show.
Yeah. Is it like the same? I'm assuming it would be like the same makeup look every time where it's like neutral eye, a little bit of lip gloss.
I mean, yes, but like she does like genuinely try to like, so like the episode I watched last night is a girl who's wearing a ton of makeup during the episode. And basically what Carmody is doing is like trying to like soften it, but still like give her like the general vibe of what she's been doing. And then with people who don't wear makeup at all, she's trying to basically give them like a 5-minute makeup routine. Honestly, a lot of what Carmody ends up doing is therapizing people about how much they hate their face. Because it almost always comes down to them hating their face. And then she's like, you're beautiful. Like, I would love for Carmody to do my makeup because I just think she'd be so nice to me the whole time.
Aww.
One episode in particular in this vein that sticks out in my mind, I mentioned her already, Beryl. So she's 23.
Her name being Beryl is just fucked up. I know that it's like Beryl, but it's like, yes, your name is Beryl.
Yes. So she, when the show starts, has like grown out, washed out pink hair. And Clinton and Stacy give her so much shit for it. And they keep saying like it's gonna hold her back in her career. But then Ted, who's a fucking G, just basically gives her like a hotter pink. Like he just like gives her like blunt bangs and hot pink hair. And I think that's cunt of him.
Yes.
Because she wanted to have pink hair. She wanted pink hair. And he was like, fuck it. You're like, right now your hair looks like unprofessional because it's like not done. But if you want pink hair, I'm going to give you like cool girl pink hair.
Yes. And that's like having like cool girl colored hair. Like, I don't know. Like the thing is like if you style anything the right way, it works. There's nothing that in isolation is like unable to be worn in a way that is palatable to people.
Right. So then the girl will do a reveal to Stacy and Clinton, and she will try on 3 new outfits from the clothes that she bought, and then they will show you, like, what she was able to buy with the $5,000. And basically, almost every time, like, basically they're creating a capsule wardrobe. And so then the last segment of the show is a party with the participants' friends where they see her new style, and then we basically get a montage of her in, like, outfits based on the wardrobe that she bought, and some words from the participant about the experience and what they're gonna do with it. So, like, basically, like, am I gonna keep dressing in this way, or am I not?
Well, they threw out all your fucking clothes. You got no choice.
Right. So I think what's important to me to just like mention before we get into the like what the rules normally are, the participant is never the authority on any of this, which I think it was the most frustrating thing to me in rewatching it. It truly is about what Stacy and Clinton's, as well as Ted/Nick and Carmody's vision is for them, their wardrobe, and ultimately their body. And it just reminded me of like the makeover episodes of America's Next Top Model, where it's like, because like in those, like Tyra Banks just like decides what haircut they're getting and doing it, whether or not it's like actually going to be good for their modeling career or not. Yeah. And I think that's kind of a similar thing here, that like no matter what the woman's like interest in fashion is, it's completely based on like what the experts think is right, which is hard.
Right.
And I think that like the thing that I do really like about specifically Ted and Carmody's approach to it is they're basically trying to like present an alternate option to what the girls have been doing, as opposed to being like, you must do it this way. Whereas Stacy and Clinton are a lot more like, you must do it this way. Whereas I think Nick was a little bit more, you must do it this way before he got replaced by Ted. But like Ted and Carmody are both pretty much like, I'm giving you an option.
Right.
Yeah. So the rules as they were, they're like, I sort of divided these into like 4-ish categories to talk about, because the way that they phrase them is kind of different episode to episode. But common rules are dress for your body type. The words flattering and slimming get used a lot, and flattering to them means slimmer, more conventional, and less attention drawing.
And I think dress for your body type always just means try to look less fat.
Yes. hiding problem areas. They're huge on everything. Must have a defined waist. I wrote this last night when I had like a big old hoodie on, and I am someone with a small waist and big hips, so they would shoot me with a gun for wearing all the big t-shirts I like to wear. They'd be like, "You're hating your body and you must be self-conscious." I'd be like, "No, man, I think I look cool as fuck."
Well, that's like the difference, right? Or the thing that I think is interesting is that like, it's modesty if you're fat, but then it's like, you can't be too shy in covering yourself up, especially if you have a thin or more attractive body type. More conventionally attractive body type.
Yeah. The next sort of rule is about balancing proportions. So you don't want to, like, wear something big on top and big on bottom. You know, you want, like, things that are like, if you're gonna have like a jacket on, you probably want to have a thinner pant on, things like that. And so it's like about balancing proportions. And then another big one are dressing your age.
Yeah.
That is a huge thing on this show, is dressing your age. Weirdly enough, because I think all the outfits they present on the show are so similar, it basically just ends up being like everyone should dress like they're 35.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone should look like an administrative assistant.
Yes, a 35-year-old administrative assistant in like a mid-size American city.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So these rules are subjective, but they are framed on the show as objective fashion rules. And I think the show really like runs people towards the middle of dominant culture, which, like I mentioned, makes sense for the show's central goal basically being for clothes to not stand in the way of a person's life goals. Previous participant Addie Boyle said this, Aubrey, which I'm going to send to you.
As soon as I started dressing better, wearing heels and nice slacks to work and dresses to dinner parties, people started listening to my ideas.
But this also means that there's not a ton of space for personal style on this show. And instead about fitting into the dominant culture, which has its benefits, but also its downfalls. For example, as many of you might know, I recently dyed my hair blonde, and while I love it, I sometimes see all my previous fun-colored hair and I miss her. I look way more like normal now.
I don't think so. I think that the blonde, like, shorter hair is such a serve.
I look so much more normal than I did 6 months ago, but it's fine.
I don't think so. I think especially when you are wearing, like, little quirked up outfits, I think it is so cute.
But when I'm not wearing little quirked up outfits, I look like a soccer mom.
I disagree. I know.
To be clear, I like my hair. It just, I have to be more intentional with styling now, because if I wear a Lululemon jacket and like sweatpants, I look like a soccer mom.
I mean, I have felt similarly when I've had different hair colors. Like, actually, for me, when I have red hair, I had red hair for a very long time. I really struggled to have like no makeup days when I had red hair, because just with my skin color and my features, the red hair, I think just, I don't know, my features needed some definition to really pop on my face. Whereas with my natural hair color, everything kind of blends together, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the red hair was
this is your natural hair color right now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm naturally sort of a, I guess, brunette with like light brows and stuff. And so when I don't have any makeup on, I don't know. I feel like that looks very natural because everything is sort of in that same low contrast. Whereas when I have red hair, it can be really stark. And so when you have the high contrast with my features, it makes me want to, like, you know, do more defined eye makeup to, like, balance everything out.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I definitely now, it's so funny now that I have... I feel less need to wear a bunch of makeup now than I did when I had when I was doing more alt fashion, which makes sense because like heavier makeup is more common with alt fashion than now with this like little guy thing I got going on now.
Well, I also think too, like, I think we've talked about it before, the whole like low and high contrast thing.
Yeah, we have.
Like, you have high contrast features, and so I think the blonde even emphasizes that, and I think it's really flattering.
Thanks.
And I know everyone talks about flattering as being this like bad word you're not really supposed to say anymore. I'm kind of like very neutral on the word flattering. I think a lot of people have been like, don't say flattering, because flattering to who? And it's like, to most fucking people, dude. Everyone knows what the word flattering means.
Yeah, I think people don't like the word flattering because it has the most people use it for like a weight connotation. But if you're talking about someone's like hair color, like who cares?
Well, I think most people, like, I do think for a lot of people when they're like, oh, that'll look really flattering on you, especially to a fat person, they're like, that will make you look thinner. And so I understand that. And also, it's like for like any body type, there are things that you can wear that just will look more flattering on your body.
Sure. Yeah, we took the Kibbe test.
Yeah.
So I think the thing with these rules is that they center a specific type of person, and there's not a lot of space for divergence outside of that. So these rules center cis, thin women, people who are looking to achieve some sort of middle-class professionalism, and they promote white beauty norms. And so it's like, you know, they're not inherently bad rules, but they're just based on like a very narrow vision of like what looking good means, basically. I also want to just like briefly talk about Clinton and Stacy here, and sort of like their personas on the show as like soft authority figures. Their personas are sarcastic but caring. They're very much giving like cool older sibling. They come across as authorities on the topic, and everything is positioned as being extremely reasonable. They're funny, and I would argue it very seldom comes across as like straight up cruel. It's often teasing, but I'd argue it has, this is gonna sound crazy, I'd argue it has the same-ish vibe to Joe Rogan on Fear Factor, where they're not being like, you look fucking ugly and you should kill yourself, but they're definitely like egging them on and making fun of them at times.
It's like a little bit of negging.
Yeah, it's like negging. Listen, we're in the pickup artist era, it's neg time.
The vibe that they give me is like when you have the little angel and devil on your shoulder to represent your conscience, and they're just both the devil.
I think part of like the rules framing and all of that also helps to assert their authority, because it ostensibly becomes about compliance. Like it's about like complying to the things that they're saying and like trying to make them proud.
Well, and it's like, we have set these rules. These are not suggestions or things that we think you should do. These are the rules through which you should like look at your style with.
Yeah. A little bit about their backgrounds, because I do think sometimes people like to say that they had no experience in fashion, which is not true. So this is a quote from Clinton about how he ended up on what not to wear and how he ended up in fashion in general. Aubrey, you'll be playing the role of Clinton Kelly.
I sort of fell into fashion. I was a magazine writer and editor in New York City, and I wrote about fitness, I wrote about travel, relationships, and then I got a job at Marie Claire, and it took off from there. I worked for Marie Claire first, then Mademoiselle magazine, and then DNR, where I got into men's fashion and women's wear daily. The list goes on. Then one day my agent called me and asked if I would like to audition for What Not to Wear, and I said, what the heck, why not?
Yeah, and then as for Stacy London during college, she did a summer internship in Paris in Christian Dior's PR department, which made her interested in the fashion industry. She began her career as a fashion assistant at Vogue magazine and later became the senior fashion editor at Mademoiselle. She's also styled photo shoots for other magazines, fashion shows, and celebrities like Liv Tyler and Kate Winslet. And they were both in their late 30s, early 40s while this show was on the air. Another interesting thing is that, like, Clinton Kelly is a gay man, but they don't ever really use that fact to assert their authority. There's nothing on the show that's like, you should listen to me because I'm a gay man, so I know things about clothes. Which, like, that's nice.
Yeah, the opposite of Queer Eye.
Literally the opposite of Queer Eye. So... And then sort of like the last thing I wanted to talk about today was that the show is very obsessed with not trying too hard and not looking desperate because they want women to be taken seriously. But the thing that I remember the most about the show from watching it while I was growing up is how obsessed the show was with the idea of dressing your age. It is the theme of so many episodes of this show, and it has made me like truly live in fear my whole life of this moment where like suddenly all the clothes I like wearing are too young for me and I have to start like dressing old. But I do think the internet is saving me from that because there are so many stylish people of all ages and body types online, and I really do. I love anyone who is older than me. You don't even need to be old, because what does old even mean? Just anyone who is older than me and is still dressing cool and posting their outfits on the internet. I just want to say thank you so fucking much. It makes me so happy. There's this woman I follow. Her name is Noelle and Fox. She's, I think, just turned 39.
Oh, I like her.
Love her. She's from Arizona. She just turned 39, and she's still dressing very cool. And this show very much treats, like, after you hit 35, it's like you're like kind of need to start like dressing more mature. And like she still dresses very cool. There's also like several like old, when I used to use TikTok, there were several women in their like 50s, 60s, 70s who I followed who were posting their cool outfits. And like, so all to say that like I think that, and I will say, preview for the next episode, like Stacy and Clinton now agree with this, where they're like, dressing your age is sort of fucking made up. And I think part of that is because all of these people online were like, no, I'm X age and I dress like this. There's no like way you need to dress for your age.
Right. I think that they were using that as a proxy to be like, hey, you're 39 and you're working in an office, but you're dressing like you're going to the club. Like,
yeah.
And I think they use that as a proxy to be like, you need to dress your age, like you need to look as mature as you are. And I don't know, like, I think it just feeds into that whole, like, trying to dress for work and centering it around, like, really, like, work-based outfits. And I mean, I think the culture was different then.
Yeah. And I think it's that whole, because the other thing I kept thinking about that, like, has disappeared now is the whole idea of, like, an outfit that transitions from day to night.
I was
like,
literally just about to say this.
Yeah. Like no one is marketing their, like, their clothing now as, like, transition from day to night. Like, no one does that anymore because it's, like, that's not a thing.
I was so prepared when I was a kid to have to deal with, like, all right, I wear this to the office, and then afterwards when I get drinks, I have to put my hair down and put on my lipstick and transition the outfit. No, nobody does that.
Well, and I think you see that all the time, and, like, people will make TikToks about, like, late 2000s, early 2010s where women were, like, wearing business casual in the club.
Yeah.
Because, like, it wasn't about transitioning your look from day to night. It was about just wearing business casual in the club.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now everyone's like, no, I'm just gonna go home and change.
But then it was also hilarious because we were then in high school wearing business casual.
Yes. Yeah. You ever think about Charming Charlie?
Oh my god. I literally just referenced Charming Charlie the other day to people, and they didn't know what I was talking about. And I was like, it was this interesting store where everything was sorted by color, and it had so much, like, chunky jewelry. My mom loved Charming Charlie.
Yeah, it was an accessory store that everything was sorted by color, and it was kind of lit.
I mean, it was...
I bought so much jewelry for school dances there.
It was so satisfying to go in there, though. I imagine your little autistic brain was just like, everything is organized in a way that makes sense.
Yes, I liked it.
Well, that's why I hate going into a lot of retail stores, because I'm like, okay, so it's just... I just look around?
Yes, and it was very overwhelming. I went to Nordstrom on New Year's Eve to buy a dress, and I was like, I hate this.
Yeah.
Like, I like the dress that I bought, though. It was cute.
Well, it's part of why I like to buy stuff online, because I don't know, when I hate the experience. It's like, so I go to the mall, walk into the store, grab a bunch of dresses, 3 of them will fit me, and they all look ugly, and for some reason they're all $1 million.
Yes, yeah. I've really had great Nuuly luck as someone who rents a lot of her clothes. I mean, I am wearing, I'm just going to tilt the camera down for you. This sweatshirt is from Nuuly. I have on a green sweatshirt with an Australian Shepherd on it. And these jeans, which have this sort of, like, fun, wavy side hem, are also from Nuuly. And like, they both, I have had very few things from Nuuly not fit.
Yeah.
Which is really nice. Which is so different than, like, even my regular online shopping experience.
That is what is really fascinating, though, because when I did Stitch Fix, I was also really surprised because I never had an item from Stitch Fix that didn't fit me.
Yeah, same.
And I'm like, oh, so you guys have the ability.
Yeah. So I think young women on the show are told to not look sloppy or slutty, and older women are told to not look too youthful or too frumpy. And so that's sort of like, they're just all trying to get them to look like, again, Aubrey, your note about they're trying to make them look like administrative assistants is tea.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
And I think just overall, it's reflective of this, like, enforcement of a very narrow window of what is acceptable for women to wear.
Well, and how no woman can ever win, right? Because it's like, oh, you need to show off your figure more. Oh, well, now you look too slutty. Cover it up. Oh, now you look frumpy. And it's like, okay, great. So we have to do this, like, fine calibration of ourselves every single time we fucking leave the house.
Yeah, exactly. And read that. So sort of the big question I was pondering as I was working through all of this was like, did this show help people or did it train us to police ourselves? And I think the answer is yes to both. Because I think this show, like, genuinely helped a lot of the women who went on it. And for, like, people who are very paralyzed by, like, making choices about their clothing, being told, like, you need a structured jacket, a printed top, and a nice pair of pants, and, like, a couple necklaces that you like wearing is good if you, like, don't want to think about what you're wearing all the time.
Well, I think that's why so many people like capsule wardrobes now.
Yes. And it's like, so that's totally, like, I don't necessarily think that, like, that's bad. But again, because the show was presenting such a narrow viewpoint on what was acceptable, it then did become like a bit of a, like, policing ourselves and our bodies thing happening as well. So that's sort of where I'm going to leave things off for today, because I don't really want to talk more about the show without having Aubrey watch a couple full episodes. So next time, we're going to have Aubrey and a guest, comments on their experience of watching a couple of episodes, and we're also going to talk a little bit about what Stacy and Clinton are up to now, because let me tell you, they don't really agree with their past selves. Also, Stacy's a lesbian now.
Yeah!
Hey everybody, slightly different outro today. We're not a political podcast, so I didn't want to put this at the beginning of the podcast in case anyone was coming here for an escape to listen to us yell about what not to wear, but obviously there are horrible things going on across the United States, especially in Minnesota, where I know we have some listeners, and me and Aubrey talk about politics enough on the podcast that I thought I felt bound to say something, and I don't think it'll come surprise to anyone that me and Aubrey are very pro-abolishing ICE and are very anti-everything happening at the hands of these ICE officers across the United States. You know, it's hard to open your social media and see all these horrible things happening in Minnesota, and you're like, what the fuck do I do? So in the show notes today, there's going to be some organizations that I have found through a few different sources that if you want to throw some money somewhere, a great place to throw them or to amplify them. So anyway, fuck ICE for real. And I hope everyone is staying safe, and thanks for listening. And we'll see you next week for more silly fun times.